Welcome to another edition of Careers That Matter. I'm joined by Mark Liedemann, who is the President and CEO of Infrastructure BC. Mark, welcome.
Thank you.
What does your job entail as President and CEO of an organization that is a branch of the provincial government?
A lot of it is about relationship management, actually. Working with infrastructure owners, making sure the organization has enough resources. I obviously have a board of directors I report to, so I need to work with the board and we set the strategic priorities together. So there's a lot of things that I'm a project person at heart, but I can't do as much project work as I would like because there's just a lot of kind of corporate obligations, but I work with a great team that is capable of working on all those great projects.
So you're like the leader of almost any other company. You kind of manage teams and external relations.
Yes.
Where do you have to put the majority of your time? Are you having to work with those teams, making sure that they're moving in the right direction, or are you actually a bit more on the external side, bringing in what's going to be the next bit of work?
I don't do too much on the business development side, actually. I spend more time actually probably on the human resource side, way more than I ever expected I would do. And then I spend a fair amount of time on the relationships with government because all our clients are in the public sector. We don't only work for the province, we also work for the federal government and other territories and the municipalities. They can all hire us for services and we do work with them. So there's quite a bit of kind of relationship management associated with that I spend my time on. And I would say the other time, I do sometimes get involved when things really start to break down on projects and they need some extra help. I can be a firefighter in some cases.
Right. So in your relationship with governments and whatnot, are they telling you what to do, or are you on a consulting basis with them?
No, they don't really tell us what to do. We actually, one of our roles, because our shareholder is the Minister of Finance, so one of my jobs is actually to advise the Minister of Finance and to advise people in the Ministry of Finance themselves, like the staff people, about what's the best way to go about procuring and building some of this infrastructure in the province.
Do you have to have a pretty good grasp of financial matters as well? Because I'm sure that you're working with some significant budgets.
The dollars are all large on these projects, and yes, people do want me to have a good understanding of the numbers, but that kind of comes to me naturally. I consider myself a finance person first and foremost. I used to be a banker, so the numbers aren't a problem for me.
So give me the description of a typical day for you. Like, how do you get to work? What do you do once you're there? What are you dedicating your time to?
Well, I start probably getting on my bike and cycling to work, get ready for the day. I tend to work most days in Vancouver, but I work a fair amount of the days in Victoria because we have half the staff in Victoria and a lot of my key government relationships are in Victoria. But then, there'll be definitely some meetings with the team. Some days I might meet with the board chair. Another important role that I have and my management team members is we have an important governance function on the major capital projects that are being built in BC. So in general, right now we have about 30 plus of these. We call them project boards. It's a little bit like a steering committee. We would meet once a month with the people that are running the job. They would report out to us on the scope, the schedule, and budget. And we would, make decisions that are above their particular authorization. And we kind of try to keep these projects on track. So we need to prepare for these meetings. They're all like mini board meetings. We got our little board binders. We need to read the materials and come prepared to ask questions and make decisions to help the chief project officer who's running the job doing it. So there's a fair amount of time preparing and going to those meetings, and they happen every month. So they're quite repetitive in that sense.
So, you have to have quite a wide range of skills and experience. When you left your secondary institution, did you go, I know what I want to be when I grow up? I want to run an infrastructure department for the province of British Columbia. Like, where did you get started in your education and then career?
Yeah, it wasn't a straightforward path. So I have a degree in biochemistry from University of British Columbia. I grew up here in Vancouver. And then I was going to do grad studies in biochemistry, and I had a professor that agreed to take me on, but he needed to apply for a grant in order to fund the position. So he didn't get the grant initially. So then I actually went to Germany, and I went to work in high school, and I taught English in high school for a year in Germany. And that was quite nice for me because my parents are both German and all my family's back in Germany. So it was a bit like a reunion for a year. And I came back and he still didn't get the grant. So it was like, okay, I can't wait for you forever. I need to move on with my life. So then I actually went to work for TD Bank for 5 years. And then I did some work on the personal side of the bank, personal lender, mortgages and so forth. And then I transferred over to the commercial bank. But I could tell working in the bank that a biochemistry degree was not the ticket to success in banking. So while I was doing this in Victoria, and I went and did an MBA part-time at UVic. So I did that, was working at the bank, met my future wife. My future wife was a mezzanine lender, kind of all in the banking family. There are and still are no mezzanine jobs in Victoria. So I needed to move back to Vancouver. So I was looking for jobs. I found a job in the Globe and Mail. I applied for the job at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I got the job. So I moved back to Vancouver.
Oh, you found the job listing of the Globe and Mail. For a second, I thought you said that you applied at the Globe and Mail.
No, not at the Globe and Mail, but it was a job ad in Globe and Mail, kind of national ad. I applied, and I got the job. And I came into a very small infrastructure consulting group at PricewaterhouseCoopers, which was just starting up. And they were really focused on doing, at the time, what was something very novel in Canada, public-private partnerships, or P3s. So I got started. I was the third member of the team. I joined 2 engineers, and they needed a finance person. So we were kind of the core of the team. And that's when we started to do things like Canada Line. It was one of my first projects when I was working there. I worked there for about 8 years. And then I started, one of my clients was actually Partnerships BC, as they were called back in the day. Subsequently renamed to Infrastructure BC. But I was working for them all the time, doing things like Port Mann Bridge was another one of the projects that I worked on a long time ago. But then I decided that I would move from PricewaterhouseCoopers over to Infrastructure BC, because Infrastructure BC I saw as it was a much bigger organization, and they really controlled a lot of the deal flow in BC, and I wanted to learn as much as I could. So I went to somewhere where they had all the deals going through them. Whereas if I stayed at PwC, one of the big 4 firms, I would only get probably access to 25% of the deals to learn. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to learn faster. So I went to a bigger organization. And I've been there for 16, 17 years now.
So what would you say would be the most important characteristic that you possess that allowed you to be open for these, shifts and curves and downright right-hand turns on your path to where you are now?
I think a big part of it is actually just being curious. Curiosity is a big part, and wanting to know more about that. So whether it's my own self-curiosity, where I want to go learn more about what the contracts are doing in Australia or New Zealand, which I went on a fact-finding mission there to figure that out, and I brought those contracts back to BC. So we're actually now a leader in kind of a different form of contract, which we haven't really used in Canada very much. Or just other aspects like that, where willing to go try something new and having the curiosity and the confidence to go do that. And you may be the person who has to go and do the research to figure it out. And that's been very helpful for me throughout my career.
So when you're doing something and you're focused in on it, that's one side of it. But as you pointed out, another big part of your job is HR and leadership. What insights can you give to somebody who says, Mark, I think I would like to be a future you? When it comes to the element that you think, I'm dealing with all this infrastructure, and then you learn, no, I'm running an organization of people.
It's challenging because people generally don't get promoted based on their HR skills. They're promoted because they're technical strengths. And I was in that category. So it definitely helps to have kind of the right HR people to help support you. Again, you need some curiosity to go out there and kind of learn more. It helps I'd spend some time kind of networking with kind of the CEOs of other similar organizations, whether it's in the country or across the world, or other kind of BC Crown type companies that may have the same issues in terms of the same environment they need to work in. So I get a lot of benefits from communicating with those other people because they have good ideas too. An example would be like, how do you deal with COVID? Right. We all we all had to struggle through that. We all had kind of different approaches.
Yes.
So it's very beneficial to talk to your peers.
Well, it's also about relationships, the ability to build relationships. And I remember Perry Bellegarde, I interviewed him once while he was still the National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations. And he said something that I think is important to remember for all of us, no matter what our career is. If you can't build relationships, you can't build anything. I think he's right.
I agree.
You, I think, echo that sentiment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks for giving us a little glimpse into your life as President and CEO of Infrastructure BC, but also your path to arriving in the position that you're in.
Thank you very much, Stuart.